Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for us, and for all of you following us on this day and joining us. I am Pedro de Vasconcelos. I'm the manager of the financing facility for remittances at the International Fund for Agriculture Development. We are gathered today in the context of the ongoing International Migration Review Forum, officially launched this morning at the UN, and that will go on until Friday. The purpose of this event today is to support the IMRF and the review of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, and specifically its objectives 19 and 20. So towards this end, we've put together a panel of experts today that would allow us to review the main aspects regarding remittances from the perspective of remittance families, remittance markets, and the development priorities that are key to maximize the development impact of these flows. So to open this event today, we have the honor to host His Excellency Giovanni René Castillo Polanco, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Guatemala. It will be followed by opening remarks from Jyotsana Puri, Associate Vice President, Strategy and Knowledge Department of IFAD. And after the panel and interventions from the floor, we will have the honor of hearing from Maria Francesca Spatolosano from Ondesa. So without further ado, and the fact that we're going to be hosting this event in between roundtables and be very mindful of time, I would like, without further ado, to give His Excellency Giovanni René Castillo Polanco the floor for his high-level remarks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vasconcelos. Good morning to all, or I will say good afternoon to all. It is an honor to participate in this side event on the margins of the International Migration Review Forum in order to address the contributions of migrants in the post-COVID-19 era. I thank the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the United Nations, and the World Bank for organizing and inviting me to deliver some opening remarks. The contribution of migrants to economic growth and the achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is considerable in countries of origin and destination countries. But perhaps more important is the protection of migrants and guaranteeing the fundamental rights and freedom throughout the migration cycle. One of the more tangible contributions of migrants is remittances. The numbers speak for themselves on how large these flows of capital can be. But to reach our collective goals, we need global policies that can ensure a coherent and effective multilateral response to the development challenges around migrants and remittances, including in the healthcare response and the socio-economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. This is why I am in New York this week for the International Migration Review Forum, which is an important milestone in reviewing progress on global policy around migration. It will be an opportunity to highlight some important national experiences and to strengthen international cooperation and collaboration. Side events such as this enrich the deliberations and contribute to the global discussion. So we welcome the valuable substantive contributions from the panelists and from the dialogue. The critical role of remittances for the development of communities of origins is evident in the countries like mine, which saw an increase in remittances received of 34.9% in 2021, representing 17.8% of our gross domestic product. This shows the magnitude of the contribution that family remittances have on economic growth. In this context, we have been promoting actions that incentivize more and productive use of remittances throughout investment programs and financial education initiatives that could translate into increased community development efforts. By promoting saving and productive investments, the intention is to incentivize projects for job creation that diaspora communities can invest in from abroad. The core challenge we see in this process is around an effective reinvestment of these remittances, for which strategic partnerships with banks and the private sector must be consolidated. We believe in the importance of creating adequate conditions and promoting actions that can lead to new opportunities, such as the temporary work program, a joint initiative with the Minister of Labor, under which Guatemalan workers can gain employment opportunities abroad. Through this mechanism, we are able to promote our workforce in new markets in other countries that are in demand for skilled laborers in areas such as agriculture, constructions, and tourism, among others. Finally, I want to reiterate the need to continue promoting faster, safer, and cheaper remittance transfers, reducing the transaction cost of remittances to 3% or less, in accordance with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as well as promoting the financial inclusion of migrants in line with Objective 20 of the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. Guatemala stands ready to support global efforts that contribute to the well-being of our migrants, and in that regard, welcomes the discussion today and the invitation to speak and share some thoughts with you. I hope you can visit us, Guatemalans, soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Ministers, for those remarks and very insightful and support for this very important process. It's been an honor to have you here. And in that respect, is also my honor to give the floor also to Jyotsna Puri from IFAD, Associate Vice President, Strategy and Knowledge Department. Joe, as for the intimate people, we say Joe in the home of IFAD. So if it's okay, if I address you like this, you have the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Pedro, and please do call me Joe. Colleagues, distinguished participants, Your Excellency, Mr. Giovanni Rene Castillo Polanco, I am so pleased today to take this opportunity to address you at this very important event organized in the context of the International Migration Review Forum. And I really want to thank His Excellency, Mr. Giovanni Polanco, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Guatemala, for delivering his high-level remarks. It is really my pleasure to welcome distinguished stakeholders from governments, the development community, and the private sector, who I think all share a belief in the power of remittances to not only change individual lives, but also shape our common future as a whole. Ladies and gentlemen, as the world starts to recover from the severe impact of COVID-19, it has now become very clear that remittances have gone far beyond supporting loved ones coming back home. These vital funds have supported entire communities and have kept local economies running. Around the world today, there are about 200 million people working outside the place that they call home. In line with the trend that started in 2020, estimates now indicate that in 2021 alone, remittance flows to low and middle income countries reached 605 billion, a gain of more than 8.5% compared to 2020. Over 1 billion people are directly involved today in either sending or receiving this money. One less known aspect of this phenomenon, but of really huge importance for an organization like IFAD, is the fact that over half of these flows go to rural areas, where they count the most and where challenges and opportunities are also the greatest, especially in dealing with crisis, COVID, climate, etc. Indeed, It is in these rural areas where financial inclusion rates are lower, payment infrastructure is usually weak, and where remittances can really help to secure economic wealth and livelihoods for the families and communities, especially in terms of crisis. They can help to prevent many smallholder farmers, women, youth, and essentially the target group that IFAD looks at from falling into poverty traps where they face financial shocks. Remittances are also pivotal to helping rural people invest in resilient activities. And resilience is of really key importance to IFAD. And by this, I mean that they help to provide them with sustainable alternatives to migration or forced migration. Through remittance-linked adaptive savings, insurance, credit, investment products, flows can bring resilience to hundreds and millions of migrant families and are a crucial means to build families and their way towards financial independence. This is really a key space, resilience that is, that IFAD works in. And therefore, this is really critical work for us. Another really important fact is that both remittances and diaspora investments to rural areas often offer a very real avenue for climate adaptation. Frequently, we see that these flows support the ability of smallholder farmers to better anticipate, manage, and become resilient to climate change. As we approach the 2030 milestone, ladies and gentlemen, we know that remittances are already instrumental in helping millions of families in reaching their own personal SDGs. But the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs are not the only global initiatives that are in place to acknowledge the immense potential of remittances to address development challenges and really to meet the full potential of our lives. The Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration in its objectives 19 and 20, specifically addresses the positive contribution of migrants and diaspora to both their destination countries and their families and communities back home. The Global Compact especially provides specific guidance for public and private stakeholders on ways to maximize flows and in the process provide millions of remittance families more options to build a better future. In my view, the recent global pandemic has also illustrated this urgent need as we once again saw migrants' incredible resilience and commitment to their families back home as they continue to send remittances and invest in countries of origin despite tremendous challenges. I think the crisis also proved to be an unprecedented opportunity for achieving Objective 20 of the Global Compact, because it created the conditions for increased adoption of digital channels, which has really helped to lower costs in many remittance corridors, and which has also promoted the use of formal channels. Ladies and gentlemen, for more than a decade now, IFAD has been working with migrants and their families back home in more than 50 countries to maximize the impact of both migrants' investment and the remittances they send. In particular, through its financing facility for remittances that Pedro also spoke about and that he leads, IFAD has been working on models of intervention where both of these financial flows can be linked with investment opportunities in rural areas. And the results are clear. It works. IFAD is behind also the organization of the Global Forum on Remittances, Investment and Development, and is the custodian of the International Day of Family Remittances, which has been unanimously proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly in 2018 and observed each year on June 16th. In fact, both of them are mentioned in Objective 20 of the Global Compact for Migration. In this context, actually, I'm going to take the opportunity to invite everyone to join us in celebrating the International Day of Family Remittances on the 16th of June, and to join the hashtag Family Remittances campaign. So that's one word, Family Remittances, to make concrete actions towards supporting and advocating for the development impact of remittances. Distinguished participants, in conclusion, and while wishing you a very productive webinar, it is my pleasure to introduce you now to IFAD's president, Gilbert Hongbo, through a video message for the occasion of this forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. And this is a very short message done in the context of the IMRF, so I'll ask my colleagues just to put it on. It's less than a minute.
Dear colleagues, the International Migration Review Forum will give new impetus to our shared ambition to support millions of migrants and their communities of origin. IFAD's focus on sustainable rural transformation is closely connected with migration. Rural areas are often the starting point of the migration journey. Migrants make powerful contributions to rural development by supporting their communities' social and economic well-being. They have continued to send money home throughout the COVID pandemic, demonstrating their incredible resilience and commitment even in times of crisis. To achieve the SDGs by 2030, we all need to step up efforts to make remittances more affordable and accessible in remote rural areas where they have the greatest impact. And we must provide migrants with appropriate tools for investing back home. IFAD is committed to continue promoting initiatives toward better access to remittances and greater financial inclusion, and to foster new synergies through the Global Forum on Remittances, Investment and Development, and the International
A little technical glitch in there. Our apologies for that. We might try to solve the issue later on. In the meantime, I would like to thank Vice Minister for your presence here. I know that you need to leave us, so just wanted to thank you as we continue this webinar. Thank you for your presence in here. So without further ado, I would like because the time is running, as we know, the events, the roundtables today will continue at 3 o'clock. So this is why today we're trying to make it short. And I wanted to thank again for these opening remarks. A lot of context has been introduced, I think, and we will try in the next panel, in the next 40 minutes to try to address some of the concepts you have heard: supporting migrants or remittance families' own SDGs. You heard about resilience, opportunity through digitalization, financial inclusion. At the end of the day, more options for migrant families to use their funds. And I would like us to take you with the panelists that we have today through some journey to try to understand that reality, the reality of remittance families, that is the migrants. And we will hear from our colleague Gibril, a visiting professor in practice, London School of Economics and co-founder of GK Partners and Remit Aid, to tell us that reality of the migrants themselves. We will then also go to Emmanuel Semambo, head of External Sector Statistic Divisions, Statistics Department of the Bank of Uganda, to let us know about the reality of these flows and the people, these remittance families, the recipients. What does this mean for countries such as Uganda? And then what makes all this happen a reality? The market, the remittances market. So much focus is given on the remittances market, on the cost, but it's a lot more also about the services around this. How can remittances have a bigger bang for the buck at the end of the day? So we'll hear from Leon Isaacs that will highlight a little bit more on these opportunities we've been talking about, particularly through digitalization. And then we will hear from Sonia Plaza, also to let us with some of the aspects that are important here as we try to make more out of this phenomenon. The understanding it requires more data, better data in this regard. So we will hear about this, and then putting it all together, I think there's huge development opportunities And Stephanie Shah from Head of Division Policy Issues of BMZ will try to highlight some of the opportunities and challenges as well on in this regard. And from that, we will open the floor also from some contributions. But the objective today is to try to highlight some key messages as the IMRF proceedings are going and member states are trying to get a better grasp on the how can we make sure that we are in the right way of implementing the Global Compact on migration. So without further ado, and with this introduction, I would like to give the floor to start on this promised journey, as I mentioned, to Gibril Fall for his remarks. Each panelist will have 5 minutes. We will then give the floor for member states with priority for a small session and respond to some questions and answers. Do feel free to include those in the chat, and so the panelists can also start addressing them. Anything that will not be addressed will be put online as well later on. So do not hesitate once again to post your questions. So with this, Gibril, I would like to give you the floor, and I will start your clock as well. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Pedro. Greetings to the distinguished participants, and my thanks to IFAD, UN, DESA, and World Bank for convening this side event. All through human history, in periods BC, DC, and AC, some immutable facts remain. When we discussed development policy with great inspiration in the period before COVID-19 BC, or when we actualized development practice with intense perspiration in the period DC during COVID-19, or now when we yearn for enhanced institutional partnerships with great aspiration and anticipation in the period AC after COVID-19, one fact remains, that migrant and diaspora communities as actors in development have remained above average in terms of their resilience, constancy, and productivity. One asks the question, why is it that this community of people deliver on development beyond average and above comparable stakeholders? One may enter into a great deal of philosophical and macroeconomic analysis, but one fact remains, that migrant and diaspora represent self-help and are motivated already and have ventured in more ways than one. So the very need for motivation often required to instill and to project action is resident and assumable in migrant and diaspora organizations and individuals. I had the good fortune to work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the small country of the Republic of the Gambia, where I am from, in their GCM IMRF report. In our small country with big migration, of the 40-something pages of the IMRF report, a quarter, 10 of them, is on objective 19 and 20. I recommend that those of you in New York who bump into our colleagues have a chat with this small case study of the Gambia. And I take the opportunity to acknowledge the input and the support IFAD is giving to the Gambia, especially in the area of digitization of financial flows and remittances. In 2019, remittances to the Gambia was 329 million. During COVID, it jumped to 589 million. And in the year just past 2021, it reached a remarkable sum of $776 million. And this is what the Central Bank of the Gambia has counted as coming through the money transfer operators in the country. It represents over 50% of the GDP of the Gambia. Pedro, I would want to make two basic and simple recommendations in relation to our aspirations of further institutional cooperation relating to Objective 19 and 20. On Objective 20 on remittances, I make two suggestions. Let us not be tired in asking governments to do whatever they can to prevent this prevalence and trend of de-risking. Many of the banks and financial institutions are using de-risking as a red herring, virtually with no merit or whatever, to shrink and close down the space for financial flows that affect remittances. Second, on the cost of remittances in the Gambia and many other countries, we find that the target of 3% or below need to be disaggregated a corridor for implementation to make sense. In the Gambia, corridors like UK and the Gambia, you can get in some cases as low as 1%. Yet in other corridors, it may be as high as 19%. So a corridor approach to cost management relating to remittances is what we would recommend. On Objective 19, relating to enhancing the contribution of the diaspora to sustainable development, I again highlight two facts. One, having reviewed the different subsections of Objective 19, I have the sense that there are two particular areas that remain underdeveloped. One is diaspora development funds. Co-financing in the form of diaspora development funds is quite underdeveloped.
I'll ask you to conclude, and you can also remember we might have some time later, but I will ask you to conclude.
Yes, then so it's diaspora development funds on Objective 19, and the second recommendation on that would be accessing diaspora savings in order to enhance diaspora investment. I thank you so much, and over to you, Pedro.
Thank you for that. And I'm very glad about what you mentioned about the diaspora savings, because this is beyond remittances. It's also very important to highlight that. There's a lot of confusion sometimes about remittances and diaspora savings. So that is also something that we can elaborate further. But now I would like is then, I think you passed it very nicely to the next point, where I would like to invite Emmanuel Semambo, the head of External Sector Statistic Division of the Bank of Uganda, to let us know a little bit more about the receiving side here, what it means of this for the hard work and the hard contribution that Gabriel mentioned from migrants. What does it mean for the families? So, and the country, in this case, Uganda. So Emmanuel, I will give you 5 minutes right now to showcase your highlights in this regard. You have the floor.
All right, thank you very much, Pedro, for the opportunity, and thank you, IFAD, and every other stakeholder involved for organizing this event and inviting me to make a few remarks at the event. I'll go straight to my remarks, and like it's been highlighted, remittances are really key for countries, both at the macro level and the micro level. At the macro level, I'll highlight just two areas. One, they're a major source of foreign exchange for the country, and such inflows are crucial for basically management of exchange rate policy and that kind of thing. In Uganda, remittances average about 4% of GDP over the recent years, and they're probably the second major source of foreign exchange earnings, of course, behind exports in general. At the macro level, there's so much that remittances have done or can do to the recipient households. One, they are really a source, or they form a source of livelihood for most of the recipient households. These households, our experience has seen that they actually rely almost entirely on the inflows from their relatives living abroad. And what normally happens is that in some cases, the family will pool resources and send one individual out there to try and earn the sort of resources they need to run the family. The funds are used for a wide range of activities. They used for basic consumption at home, education, health, as well as funding functions. But they don't end at that. They also go ahead and do a bit of investment, like acquiring property or even investing in business. All these uses have been reported from the numerous activities that we carry out to collect information on remittances. Overall, we get this information through an annual survey that we conduct, and we target the recipient households. The beauty with the survey, as opposed to the money transfer operators or returns from the money transfer operators, is that with the survey, you get richer information, you get to know the details, you get the stories from the recipient households, stories about their experiences with these remittances. They'll tell you the sort of transformation these flows have had to their families and to their individuals, to their other relatives. During COVID, we saw a slight decline in these flows, but when the source countries opened up, the flows resumed coming. Maybe the only point we can note here is that there was a slight reduction in the amount sent, but overall, they've resumed coming through. As an institution, what we've seen or what we can do is really handle the biggest challenge, which has been the cost of remitting these funds, because most of them come through formal channels, which are a bit expensive. But what we've done is to try and provide a conducive environment for the establishment of businesses that would facilitate the movement of funds across. We've seen a bit of new legislation that came on board recently, particularly for mobile money operators, which and other related services, which goes a long way in facilitating these kinds of flows. In terms of tapping into the funds, the diaspora funds, there's a proposal that's been on the floated for quite some time now, to have a diaspora bond targeting people in the diaspora, such that they can make a contribution back home and participate in the development of the country. I wish to leave it at that and hand back to Pedro.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Emmanuel. Again, that little beep, what you hear is when we reach the 5 minutes, but thank you so much on that. There might be another opportunity right after this to highlight. That I think these two introductions or the contextualizations I think are great in telling us the human realities behind those that send and those that receive. But one of the points that I see is that the Global Compact goes a long way in stipulating what that is expected by the private sector in this phenomenon, which is essentially making remittances cheap, accessible, and a source of greater development through its linkage with financial inclusion and financial services, actually. So I would like to invite Leon Isaac, expert in this particular field, to let us know what are the greatest changes that we have seen. I mean, over the last 10 years, things were slow in moving. They did change a lot, but with COVID, there's been a big boom in digitalization. Leon, can you tell us a little bit more about this new reality that it's here to stay and markets are seeing, but more importantly, how this can actually be seen as a very positive change in terms of opportunities of linking remittances with other development aspects. So I will give you 5 minutes to try to let us know what we should take home in that regard.
Great, thanks very much. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. As everybody else said, it's a pleasure to be invited to speak here. I'm going to try and answer some of your questions, Pedro. It's difficult in the time, so I'll just cover a few points, and particularly to talk about the viewpoint of the private sector, because clearly they are one of the key stakeholders in ensuring that all of our objectives are met. At the end of the day, they are the main interactor with the senders and receivers of remittances, and they provide the products. And ultimately, they are the agents for change. So without them, it won't be possible to achieve what we need to achieve. And for a private sector company, they need a number of things to make sure that they're really successful. That includes things like gathering and interpreting data, being continually innovative. I think particularly important, and one that doesn't always get a lot of coverage, is developing tools to help them reduce their operating costs so that they can therefore lower prices. And another key point is forming partnerships, whether it's with the people who are on this call or with other private sector operators. Running a remittance business is complicated because it always uses at least 2 countries. And often, historically, cash was the main medium of exchange. So you needed to have it at both the sending and receiving point. And that's not easy, particularly in the rural areas that we know are so important. And then, as a number of speakers have already said, remittances can't just be viewed in isolation as a mechanism to send money, but often they're also a gateway to financial inclusion. So they're critically important. Remittance companies have now started looking at this and are now offering a range of services, including those that are account and wallet based, and also other things such as insurance and savings. So we're seeing changes there. So clearly the private sector are one of the key contributors to help us achieve our mutual goals. They bring knowledge, know-how, reach and drive in order to make a difference to them and their customers. And importantly, the private sector really wants to engage with policymakers and regulators to help break down some of the barriers such as disproportionate KYC, AML, de-risking, as Jibril mentioned, creating a level playing field and harnessing much needed improvements in infrastructure, which can help develop areas such as product innovation, including digitalization. So I think, as a number of people have said, and I know you introduced Pedro, I'm getting to digital now. During COVID, despite all the horrors and challenges that many people and nations have had, remittances have been surprisingly resilient. But indeed, we have seen some fundamental shifts for the positive, particularly around digitalization. So why is digitalization so important? Well, firstly, because it's cheaper. According to the World Bank, it costs 6.3% send money at the end of 2021 using all types of services, and just 3.55% only using digital services. So that is a massive 44% lower cost to send using digital services. And if we're to achieve some of our aims, there's already evidence to show that that is an important way to go. But it's much more than that. it's efficient as well. People can deal in the remotest parts of the world, particularly using mobile services, at a time and in a manner that suits them. And for the receiver, they don't have to leave home to receive their money, which saves them time and cost. So I think just to give one example of how things have changed, before the pandemic, there was a mix of cash-based services and digital services, and you were either one company or the other. Now, every single remittance company has developed a digital solution. And the two largest companies, who I think we're all familiar with, the yellow and the red one, their handling of digital remittances has increased from around 12% of their volume pre-COVID to between 30 and 40% now. That is a phenomenal change in 2 years, and we believe that's probably accelerated this shift by at least 5 years. So at least one good thing may have come out of COVID, which I think is great. So I'm just going to wrap up, really, I know time's against me, by saying that the private sector are a key part of this solution, and they're very keen to help and be involved in discussions. So let's include them. Digitization is absolutely one of the key tools to help us achieve our goals. And I very much look forward to the progress I know we're going to make in the short, medium and long term. Back to you, Pedro.
Apologize, I have a technical problem. Sorry about that. Sonia, I will give you the floor because I think you'll do the continuation about what is important, therefore, to follow up on the data and technical and for the private sector in this particular aspect.
No, thank you very much. I'm Sonia Plaza. I'm working in Nomad. I'm the co-chair of Remittances and Diaspora, and I have been working since 2005 on remittances. And Dilip Roto, who is the head of Nomad, has been working even before. He was the first one to put in the international agenda remittances. So I'm coming here with a different perspective. I am going to challenge everybody because I think that it has to be a dialogue, okay? So when I look first, I'm going to speak very quickly about Objective 20. And I was looking at all the actions. 9 actions were proposing. Do you think that we have achieved some of them? None. Okay. The only thing that was achieved is the International Family Day of Remittances. That is very easy to achieve. But we haven't achieved even the reduction of the remittances cost. So we have seen some progress, but the actions have been very slow. And given the whole situation with everything changing, I think that we have to rewrite the Global Compact on Migration on the actions of remittances. That's my point to be provocative, but let me explain to you a little bit. On the positive, as everybody has been saying, remittances have been completely resilient. We knew that remittances are countercyclical. We knew from the previous crisis when there are disasters, when there are diseases, but in this time we have had a series of compounding cases. And you have seen the latest, I put the report that we just produced, we released last week, that we saw how much the remittances have increased. But one thing that nobody is paying attention is, who can tell me, do you think that the remittances decreased in 2020? Well, the review numbers and the numbers already reported, because it's the final number reported by the central banks. No, it's flat. They grew by 0.8%. Of course, they didn't grow so fast that we're doing in 2019, but in 2020, when there was a huge decrease in March, April, May, those quarters, at the end of the year, remittance became very resilient. And now what we have seen this increase in 2021 to 605 billion. It's an increase of 8.6%, and we are expecting by 2022, we will have growth, not so fast, but 4.4%. So that's the positive. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about 3 of the actions of the Global Compact, just to make an evaluation. We decided that we have to develop and reduce remittance and transactions cost, reach 3%. We are still on 6%. Jibril, you mentioned that we have to look for corridor by corridor. I agree. But if we do that, we lose the whole perspective, because we only concentrate on the high volume and high transactions, and those are the cheapest. What about the ones that nobody wants to pay attention, and they're poorest of the poor, no? The money that goes to Haiti, the money that goes to the small Pacific Islands. There was a big boom in 2011-12 that Digicel was going in the small Pacific Islands, and remittances have not reduced in those ones. So I think that we have not seen so much reduction on the small state, on the small volume corridors, but even now with Ukraine, you see how expensive it is to send money from Czechoslovakia to Ukraine. It's incredible. Now, the other, so in that one, we haven't agreed, we haven't achieved that objective. The World Bank is the custodian of that indicator, and we are the custodian also of the remittances flows, but we still have to do progress. The second action, they said that we have to develop innovative technology solutions for remittances transfers, mobile payment, digital. We heard Leon saying that this has been a success. Okay, is it really a success? Is really the private sector wanted to do that, or is because as a result of COVID? No? And as a result of COVID, yes, the pandemic made use of a lot of digital payments, and then it was helping the consumers to send the remittances. But do you think that digitalization has favored all the migrants? Just to give you an example, I am a migrant. I used to send money cash money home. Do you think that when I go to the largest remittance transfer providers and there was an issue, do you know what they say? No, send cash. If you want really your money to arrive in 3 seconds or in 1 minute, send cash. But I say, we're in plain COVID. Why you want me to send cash? No, for us it's easier. And just as an example on how it really impacts the poor, the digital impacting the more is not helping the migrants that don't have an ID, that are undocumented migrants, or people who doesn't know digital literacy and financial services. I send money to my mom. Do you think that she can go and use her wallet or go? She can go to take from ATM, no, but she cannot use the digital financial services. Now, this has to do with a lot of the consumer protection that I don't think that the migrants have access to this consumer protection. An example, when I send my money to the digital solutions through my online, do you know how long it took to reach to Peru? $200? 5 days. They debited the first day and they keep saying, no, they haven't charged, they haven't, the problem is in the bank in Peru. It was not true. And now you have seen what happened. MoneyGram has been sued by the New York state because they were using the money of the migrants. And this case was before COVID. Could you imagine what happened? My situation, what happened during COVID. And then you keep calling and nobody responds to you. So this is an issue of consumer protection. But what are the key challenges?
Sonia, I will ask you to conclude.
Quickly, key challenges on digitalization. Financial exclusion, I mentioned. Concentration of markets, because there's no more competition. Not all the other firms in the receiving side will be able. And exposure to cyber incidents. And the receiving countries don't have those laws. So with that, very quickly, 2 points. One point, it's the issue of data, improving data on remittances. When COVID crisis came, countries didn't have the data. Now, if you can see, for example, El Salvador, every week they monitoring the data. Somalia monitors every month. Before there were 6 months. We don't care about our data because it's a very important, but this is not only to monitor how you calculate the data, where do you place the data. NOMAD just launched last week the International Working Group on Improving Data and Remittances. So everybody is invited on that. That's on the port of remittances. I agree with Jibril, anti-money laundering risking. I can talk more about that. But for me, the most important is of the poor of the poor. The digitalization have a huge increase of excluding the poor of the poor, and we have to pay attention. In terms of the diaspora bonds, Uganda, we have been working with you before, like 10 years ago, with Casacande was there as the central bank. We were trying the diaspora thing. Nomad, the World Bank, Dilip has been helping Nigeria. We help Jamaica, Kenya, everything. I think mobilizing diaspora savings, mobilizing the diaspora resources helps a lot, but a challenge is for the diaspora. I think that they have a lot of role to play in the reconstruction back build better in COVID. Why? For example, Kenya.
Really gonna ask you to conclude.
Pharmaceuticals, the diaspora can transfer knowledge on technology. Over, thank you very much.
No, and market, because we might, I will ask then around one quick sum up to everyone. So please do write that. Thank you so much for this and to highlighting. Yes, we've been seeing a lot of the opportunities that this crisis has generated, but we need to be very cautious as well, because on these opportunities come some challenges. As you say, the financial exclusion, the digital divide is a reality that particularly for people in rural areas, we need to take very good consideration of. Otherwise, we leave them even more behind. And let's not forget, the private sector is key in achieving, I think, the development tools that we're acting on, but that's not their mission. That's not their objective. So alone, they cannot do it, and nor should they be asked to do that. So this is also one key important. They're essential in the process, but they're not the ones driving the process, and for the very good reasons. They're profit making, but here, if we can make win-win situations work with for the private sector, I think that is what we want. And that leads me really to this development rationale. And I would like then to give the floor to Stephanie Charles from BMZ here to give us that notion. Why it is so important. It is not just either governments or the private sector alone that can make it work. I think Sonia illustrated this, is this collaboration that it is required. So I would like to have your views on that, Stephanie, if you wouldn't mind, on what are the opportunities that we see ahead. You have the floor, and 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Also, thank you to the other panelists and to the colleagues in this webinar. Let me start by really thanking IFAD, UNDESA, and the World Bank for organizing this very timely side event at the margins of the IMRF. I'm glad to be here in New York and be part of the discussions on the ground. Looking forward also to some, maybe meeting some of you also for a coffee. So please do not hesitate to approach me, also colleagues from the audience, if you would like to discuss and follow up. So the German Development Corporation is committed to contribute to reducing transaction costs, inter alia, by expanding the use of digital channels, promoting innovation, competition and transparency, and by increasing digital and financial inclusion. I have taken note also of this very important points on digital exclusion and the need to leave no one behind. So this, of course, is also a principle of our engagement, to ensure that we are not only focusing on digital solutions, but really ensuring accessibility for all. Our engagement on remittances is part of a comprehensive 360-degree approach on migration and development in line with the GCM, where we intend to take all phases and forms of migration into account and look at the full migration cycle in a comprehensive manner. The diaspora support, our diaspora policy is an essential part of this comprehensive approach. And our understanding is, and what we would like to support, is that diaspora engagement goes beyond financial remittances, has many phases. Diaspora organizations are founding civil society organizations. They're carrying out projects in their countries of origin. They're starting businesses and supporting knowledge transfer. Through all these and many more social and financial remittances, they contribute to achieve the sustainable development goals of the 2030 agenda, and also, of course, to achieving the objective 19 and 20 of the GCM. So in German Development Corporation, we have a range of programs in place to contribute to those overarching goals. So first of all, we see diaspora organizations as a crucial part of German civil society, and intend to strengthen their voice and strengthen their capacities, and really and supporting them to be an integral part of civic engagement, because we believe that engagement for development policy can be an important contribution also to integration efforts as part of civic engagement in Germany. And of course, the work of diaspora organizations and migrant representatives for development is giving us an added value of focusing on specific expertise and bridge building between diaspora and countries of origin. So with our programs, we support and promote small-scale development projects. We fund business startups of diaspora representatives and migrants. We also have a short-term voluntary assignment program in place for diaspora professionals in countries of origin with the objective of knowledge transfer and circular migration. And we have a funding scheme for professionals trained in Germany who wish to return to their country of origin on a longer-term basis. So with this program, for example, we can subsidize income for some limited period of time to make it easier for professionals to return and start a career in their country of origin. We also have a focus on contributing to improve the remittance market. So for instance, we collaborate with the Central Bank of Jordan and the private sector to digitize remittances with a specific focus also on Syrian refugees in Jordan. And coming back to the principle of leave no one behind, to ensure or to at least minimize the risk of that, it's a priority for us also to invest into financial literacy. So for example, we are currently piloting an e-learning remittances online toolkit using the digital learning platform Atingi, where we also would like specifically focusing on refugees and migrants and their needs on financial literacy support. We believe that to make progress towards faster, safer and cheaper remittances, we need concerted efforts of private sector, civil society and governments. For that to work, effective mechanisms for dialogue, cooperation and support are necessary, like the IMRF, but also that's why we support the Global Forum on Remittances, Investment and Development, co-organized by IFAD. It was mentioned already before, as an important platform to exchange on best practices. And we are very much looking forward to the next edition, which also will hopefully take place in person as a restart also of this forum on remittances. We also are a long-term partner of Nomad with its important work on remittances. Sonia just very lively spelled that out, and also the publication of the recent migration and development brief was very timely for the IMRF and also for this webinar today for the Side-Event. So we have the most recent estimates and recommendations on remittances available. We commend Nomad for the recently launched International Working Group on improving data on remittances. Data is of utmost importance to have timely, granular and gender disaggregated data on remittances available, because our goal of having a data-driven development policy is of course not achievable if there is a lack of data or gaps in data availability. To support the private sector, we set up an initiative for startups on remittances technology, a so-called RemTech accelerator, to incubate innovative solutions for remittances services in our partner countries. I can share also some more information on this later in the discussion. So just to sum up, I feel that we all have a common goal to unfold the potential of diaspora engagement for sustainable development. So this is really an integral part of German development policy and its approach on migration. We very much hope that what is announced in the draft progress declaration of the IMF, that we need to redouble our efforts to reduce remittances costs. We need to strengthen their positive impact on sustainable development, because of course I also agree with Sonia, our progress has been not as fast as we all would have wished for. One important topic, outlook into the future support of German development policy on remittances, will have a much stronger stance on gender responsive and where possible gender transformative approaches. I very much agree also what was said before, and the nexus between remittances and gender and empowerment needs to be at the center of our attention in the future planning. And this is one important goal we have for our next steps in remittances and diaspora engagement of the German development policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for this and for bringing the reality. Indeed, of the 200 million, half of them are women, and on the receiving side, the same thing. So this is a reality that needs to be taken into account. We have 10 minutes left. I want to highlight again, if there's questions from the floor or member states that would like to address, please do raise your hand. In the meantime, we'll use this few more minutes maybe to recap. I see that Andrew Bamoye would like to take the floor, a representative from the civil society. I would like to ask the team from the FFR to confirm this. Yes, Andrew, you are there. Please do feel free. You have 2 minutes. If you can you confirm? Can we test your?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself, please, and then please, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Andrew Bamuje. I'm the Executive Secretary for the Uganda Diaspora and Agribusiness Network. I'm dialing in from Nairobi. I work for a development finance institution out of Nairobi, but I'm very passionate about agriculture, and I've invested back home in the last 12 years. But I took keen interest in this area because we in the diaspora remit a lot of money back home. Increasingly, Uganda is one of the larger countries that we see remittances coming home every year. And I think for us, as the youth and Ugandans abroad, we think that we can deliberately or intentionally channel more diaspora remittances into agribusiness. We all know the contribution of this sector back home, and we believe that by intentionally creating channels or programs that can link the diaspora into productive subsectors of the agribusiness sector in Uganda can generate much more value compared to what we see at the moment. We know that a lot of remittances go to consumptive expenditure, but increasingly we know that if channeled rightly and if channeled, if we build the level of trust between the diaspora and the ecosystem back home, we can genuinely and intentionally put our money to things that matter the most. I am a farmer, I'm a commercial farmer in northern Uganda, and I work with a lot of smallholder farmers in the area. And increasingly, we've invested in mechanization for smallholder farmers. And we see a lot of value in post-harvest management, among other things. But what we see on the other side, when we engage our diaspora colleagues in Europe, in Greater Africa, the question is, how do we channel our remittances to this particular sector and be able to, one, recover our money in the longer term, but at the same time, make a return on it. In other words,
Andrew, I would like to summarize, please. The 2 minutes are up, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the few minutes. I think the key message is that we're looking for greater partnerships in the global diaspora support ecosystem to facilitate greater remittances into productive sectors, including the agribusiness sector in Uganda. And we look forward to working with several of the partners on this platform with the support of the FAO in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that last point, because I think this is one thing that it is essential, particularly to reach the objective 20. There's not one strike of a pen that can solve the solution. We often say that working on remittances is a golden opportunity, but there's no silver bullets. That's what we say at IFAD, because there's no one solution fits all. It is not just one regulation that will fix everything. It is not just one marvelous app that will bring costs to zero for everyone. That's not going to happen. And without the interest of the civil society, their participation and understanding their needs, it's not going to happen. It is to continue this relationship, this tripartite, if I might say, sectoral approach that will do it, common understanding and prolong cooperation. So thank you for bringing this. I don't see any more questions, and we only have literally 5 minutes left. And I would like to give the speakers three bullet points, 3 things that you think member states right now and the IMRF, what we would like to see on Friday. What would be those 3 things that you would like to say? Leon, you already mentioned something, but if you could elaborate on digitalization. Your remarks were so hot that a fire alarm system went on here. I had to shut it down. But if you could say the 3 main things that would be important for the private sector, and then I will ask the rest of the colleagues. Okay, thanks very much. It's a great discussion. I wish we had longer, as always. So I think the key thing is please engage the private sector. They've really woken up to the fact that they need to liaise and do a much better job of having a dialogue with policymakers and regulators. I think digitization, I take every point that Sonia made, but I think we could then look at the same arguments if we looked at cash. If we had digital today and people said, let's start using cash, you think of all the problems around forgeries, the cost of moving, etc., etc. What we've got to do is tackle every single one of those challenges you said together to be able to actually really make digital work, because the gains from getting that right, particularly around including excluded groups, are so big that we will all benefit from it. And I do think the reason why people can't use digital is often due to regulation and poor infrastructure in countries. It is not down to private sector deciding we're only going to deal with people who've got that. So we need to find solutions that are proportionate and work, and we can do it. So I'm sure that's more than a minute, so I'll stop there. Thank you. No, thank you for that. I'm leaving 45 seconds. I want to make sure that we have enough time for Maria Francesca. At 14:25, we stop. Gibril, your 3 points, giving you a chance to finish on your points.
I'll just focus on one. That is to encourage institutions and member states to work with diaspora and migrant organizations on co-financing. In the Gambia, in 2020-21, we ran a pilot project on diaspora development finance together with the government of Switzerland. We gave out co-finance of 75,000 euros, and that led to 710,000 diaspora funds coming, meaning every euro given out to a diaspora actor, 9.4 euros came back, to the extent that in the Gambia, through the Migration and Sustainable Development Project and Swiss government, that has now moved from 10 projects to currently 55 projects we're doing. And Pedro, we think something like this should be tried and expanded everywhere. Please do send the information so we can put it also in this event on this. Thank you so much. Emmanuel, would like to make in 30 seconds your main contribution that you would like us to remain you with?
Yeah, but just to pick up on the issue raised by Andrew, I think coordination can be very, very useful. Coordination by all stakeholders involved can be very useful in getting diaspora, additional contribution by the people in the diaspora. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sonia? You're muted, Sonia.
Better quickly, better granularity, but one thing that we haven't discussed is interoperability. If there's not interoperability about along cross-border payments, regional payments, we still cannot reduce the cost of the remittances. The risking is important, and the closing of the correspondent banks. But my comment on the diaspora, okay, this is important. There's plenty of opportunities for the diaspora to invest, okay? They can invest in value chains, agriculture, insurance. We are doing at the World Bank some projects on the Horn of Africa to draw insurance, tap into the diaspora insurance. I'm saying pharmaceuticals. Kenya is looking at tapping to the diaspora, and in Uganda, We are working in the digitalization of BSLAs and also including women to become agent banking and agent on mobile. Please don't forget women, because all the time we forget gender in these aspects. Over to you and Pastoraliz.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And do please share the information. We will send the same thing. We will put links as well. These projects can be very inspiring. Stephanie, last point, and then we will close with Maria.
Thank you so much. So 3 key takeaways for me. First is we need a closer collaboration with the private sector. I mentioned our RemTech approach, and this is really something we are very proud of, we have established that, because it's focusing also on the private sector in the partner countries. The startups from Ecuador, India, Indonesia, Cameroon, Kenya, Kosovo, Nepal, Nigeria, and Tunisia. So a very regional wide selection of startups. We have already some first results on how these startups are bringing down the cost of sending funds. So I think that is really a very innovative pilot. Secondly, strong gender focus, I already mentioned that. And third, I found very interesting the remarks on the nexus between also climate adaptation and mitigation and remittances. And this is really an idea I noted down, and I would like to look further into and how we as a donor could also on this avenue have a stronger perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. And if I have one takeaway, it's exactly that one that I would like to highlight it. What we realize from all our projects in the sense is that the biggest investor in climate adaptation right now are remittances recipient families in dollar amounts. So all the billions that we're talking about in climate adaptation, well, the biggest part comes from remittances. So that's a good takeaway or take home message. With this, it's my honor and privilege to give the floor to Maria Francesca Spatolizano. She's the Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordination and Interagency Affairs of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Maria Francesca, you have the floor, the final remarks, and after this, we will conclude this event, and many of us will go back to the IMRF discussions back at 3. Maria Francesca, you have the floor.
Thank you, Pedro. And distinguished delegates and members of the panel and the audience, allow me first of all to express my deep appreciation to our trusted partners, the International Fund for Agricultural Development and the World Bank, who enthusiastically joined the Department of Economic and Social Affairs in organizing this event. Very often we hear about the challenges of governing international migration, of protecting and assisting migrants in vulnerable situations, and of saving migrant lives. And we read about the lack of available pathways for safe, orderly, and regular migration, about the challenges posed by return and readmission of migrants, and about the need for social cohesion, and rightly so, because these gaps need our urgent attention. Yet the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration also urges us to foster an evidence-based public discourse that can address the negative stereotypes of migrants and instead promote balanced migration narratives. Providing objective information about both the challenges and the benefits of migration is critical in this regard. So I would like to congratulate our diverse range of speakers and panelists for having truly lived up to this task. We've heard insightful perspectives from a senior government representative, from academia migration practitioner, from a statistician, a private sector representative, and a funding agency. And we have also heard institutional perspectives from 2 of the leading UN entities in this area. And I will not try to summarize the discussions in today's event, as I cannot do justice to the richness of this debate in the short time we have left. But in any case, I know the organizers are planning to issue a flash summary very soon. Instead, allow me to share a few thoughts and just 3 points I want to make. Last July, almost a year ago, during a VNR lab on migration that we jointly organized with a group of friends on migration, I called for closer linkages between the review frameworks of the GCM and the 2030 agenda. And I am very pleased that the draft progress declaration calls for greater attention to the implementation of the Global Compact in the elaboration of VNRs in the SDG, which are prepared in the context of the high-level political forum on sustainable development. The VNRs are the voluntary national reviews, and we hope that this will also facilitate a fuller consideration of migration in the annual ministerial declaration. Second consideration, and you spoke a lot about this, the increased use of digital channels for sending remittances has accelerated due to the COVID pandemic and has driven down the cost of transferring remittances. Nevertheless, despite reductions in many corridors, the overall cost of transferring remittances remains more than twice as high as the SDG target of 3%. Now, the increasing digital environment has also highlighted some unintended consequences that regulatory barriers and money laundering rules are having for migrants and diaspora. If the global financial institutions pull out of certain markets to minimize their exposure to the risk of participating in illegal transfer of funds, then more rigorous regulations around money laundering, which is a good objective per se, can nevertheless result in the disappearance of services for those in need. Lastly, even though this side event focused mainly on the contributions of migrant and diaspora communities to countries of origin, we should remind ourselves that migration is a result of both push and pull factors. The COVID-19 pandemic reminded all of us, once again, of the critical contributions made by international migrants in the economies and societies of countries of destination. Millions of migrants helped to keep our societies running as essential workers, especially in the health sector, the care economy, and along food supply chains. And it is critical that we strengthen our efforts to collect and share the evidence of those benefits and contributions in order to promote a truly informed and balanced migration narrative in countries of destination. I thank you for your participation in this side event.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria Francesca, for summing up so nicely. I think the key aspects. Indeed, I think what we can take home is there's a lot that we should take into consideration. There's no one size fits all in here. There's several approaches. We're better off, I think, than when we were 3 years ago. We didn't expect to be here, but there's some more challenges coming ahead. On our turn, before leaving you, I would like to remind you that in less than a month, actually next June 16th, is International Day of Family Remittances, as Joe Puri had mentioned. Please advocate on behalf of the potential that exists for development on how to maximize these flows, how to maximize migrant families, SDGs. Everyone is involved. So it's an opportunity not only for member states, but for all stakeholders to come forward and have their voice heard in this global debate. So I will invite everyone to be very active on that day as well, or to illustrate your actions on that day. Without further ado, I would like again to thank you so much for this. This has been recorded. I will ask the speakers again, those that have not, the flash points, because we're going to release a flash report here to support the discussions in the IMRF. This will be also put it in the website, a link to be sent on this. Any questions that the audience might still have, please do send it. We'll kindly ask the participants and the speakers here today to answer those as well. So want to thank you very much for your time, everyone, and good continuation of the day, and good evening for some of you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.